Welcome back to our weekend debate. We're just in the break deciding which angle to go on. I was interested to find out who's going to take which positions. You because you're the grumpy old man here today.
Absolutely.
You've got a different idea.
I'm trying to fulfil my role.
You're trying to set the agenda. What do you want to? How do you want to phrase this?
Well, I hope I can because this is an incredibly important few weeks. The electorate have chosen the personalities and the inclinations of their candidates. And the successful ones are now placed in the House of Keys and in Tynwald. But there's a huge job to do in a very, very short time. One of the reasons why I encouraged and achieved an extension of at least 7 days to try to form the next administration around effectively a vision. So if I said to you, what's the vision for the future of the Isle of Man, as described in the last election, I think you'd be in difficulty. Mm-hmm. So we're into this rather murky world of the weaknesses of our system compared to the strengths that we've seen in the constituency election process. And that is how we form a programme for government that enjoys the support of the people of the Isle of Man, that's clear, and that gives the Council of Ministers, the Chief Minister, a purposeful direction for 5 years, which could then be measured. We don't have it. You will recall at the last House, we sort of struggled. We fumbled about trying to elect a Chief Minister. And then we had this huge conglomeration of a collection of things that came from the successful members. It was just a great big book. It's a wish list, and that won't do. And at some stage, some way, we've got to improve the way we do the next part of the job from the date of the general election to the assembly of the Council of Ministers with a vision for the future. And one of the things that I would recall as sticking out among with regard to how candidates were asked in the run-up about various things. One of the things that kept tripping up badly was, again and again, members would say, oh, the economy is important, or questioners like yourself would say, well, what do you think we should be doing with the economy? And I cannot remember one single reply that, to my mind, formed a clear way forward.
Have you got a clear way forward? I mean, where are we going with this conversation?
I think we have had for a long time, because a successful economy depends not on choosing who does what in terms of where an entrepreneur will gain ground or create a good business, but the very basic fundamentals of what makes the Isle of Man work. And those are an excellent education system, a first-class medical service, a place of peace and law and order and justice, a place, a biosphere where the environment is highly respected. But against those four clear, important criteria is the ability to retain a competitive tax jurisdiction. And therein lies the very, very fundamental challenge, which we keep throwing away, because you can only achieve those four things if you direct significant funds towards the frontline services and reduce the size of your organisation. But hang on, Paul, let me finish, and then I'll shut up. But if I can, but the government keeps growing, and it's sucking more and more energy into itself, not to its frontline services, but to itself, at the same time as saying, let's have digital inclusion. It should now be starting to show value and harvest from this digital exercise, and it's not. It's going the other way. If this doesn't change, and if this doesn't change in this House, we're heading slowly and progressively to ever greater difficulties, and I fear for that. What I would love to see happen is the new Chief Minister be determined to single those things out and to get behind him or her that agenda to make sure it's driven forward. Because put that question, back to your question, who's going to go where? With the greatest of respect, Paul, that's a detail. What the Keys has to decide itself out with the issue of bureaucratic and civil service influence is what really matters to the electorate. And that's the very thing that has resulted, in my humble opinion, in us seeing a reduction in the interest in electing, because people are saying, yeah, it is important to elect the character, but...
You go on, don't you? Yeah. Yeah. But you said the same thing actually on up at the radio station.
I've actually been saying the same thing for about 9 years.
Okay. And I want to come back to it, but Sam, you got anyone to add on this one? He's sitting there listening, we all had to. When he starts, you can't stop him.
I think the first piece of advice for whoever comes in is do not call whatever you do the programme for government. Because it's 3 words which became an absolute laughingstock. Because every programme for government, it's in the programme for government. You all agreed to this 4 years ago. It's in the programme for government. Nobody cares. Nobody cared about the programme for government except for usually the Chief Minister and the Minister for Policy and Reform. And every now and then you get a backbench, you go, why isn't this been done? This was in the programme for government. And I just think that it's part of the problem of why people, I think it's part of the problem why we've got a lower turnout, like you said about people engaged in elections, because we are now in this point where there's, the old metaphorical smoky rooms when people are going to now be horse trading to work out who's going to end up being chief, as opposed to engaging the public more in that, which I think should be done. I know you're going to be hosting a debate.
Yes, the potential candidates, PAG are putting on a presentation. There's a date provisionally booked, so that's going to be
You're
good.
doing it.
I presented it 5 years ago. I'm just a presenter. It's their due. But to have the 3 or whatever candidates in that room and the public really engaged on it, I find that very interesting.
No wonder they did.
It's the only chance they get to do it in the sense of...
And that's why I'm saying this few weeks is the most crucial few weeks in the whole of the next 5 years and the future of the Isle of Man. And yet the electorate are just simply the audience, the silent audience that has no further say. And let me just say this issue about applying people to particular roles. Remember, the way the system works at the moment is that what you're actually doing in the traditional sense is putting in people in departmental roles where they ultimately and very quickly become apologists for that particular department, not what they should be, which is an individual standing together with the other members forgive me, I need to use the word program then, but for the direction, the vision, let's use the word vision, the vision that we want to take the Isle of Man in. And that it's a simple, in itself, it's a very simple thing to aim for, but complicated in its delivery because the government machine holds politicians back, gets us lost in detail, and we lose sight of what the whole thing's about.
Sam, what's called thing of government, programme of government?
The programme for government,
Hang on, 5 years ago, you were a minister, were you? You went
No.
5 years ago?
No. When I got elected, we were all dragged up to the I've forgotten the name of the suite, right at the top.
Yeah,
what's it called?
Brule.
Brule Suite. Senior moment. The Brule Suite, and then we had these flip charts on the wall, and we all had to scribble down our 10 most favourite things. And then from that, I was dying inside, and no, I really was. I thought, here we go again, and then it was all boiled down to make members feel that somehow their contribution was important, but nobody said, this is what we're going to achieve and this is what we're going to do. And then thereafter, the Council of Ministers became subservient to the system. It's just got to change.
I mean, obviously, if you look at it, going back to the election results, we've thrown 4 ministers out on Thursday night. Mm-hmm. So people, obviously, there's various different reasons locally why that happens, but I just think that you speak to people, and if you speak to Lib Vannon before the election, they were saying we need a party system, that's how you elect a chief minister.
It won't work on the
Which wouldn't work because they didn't. You can't do that unless you put 12 candidates up for a start, which they didn't do. They've now got, between the parties, you've got 3 people in Keys, which in fact in Timble, because none of the LegCo members are either. So that's not going to work. I just think personally, this is the last administration where the public should accept that they do not get a say in the chief minister. I think after this election, we have to do something by 2026 which puts that power into people's hands. And I know people say you're creating a presidential system. I don't think that necessarily is the case, but I always think there is, with a strong Keys and with a strong Timble, that can be prevented anyway.
We may not agree in detail here, but the principle I think we agree on, which is that actually we're in a two-part system. First of all, decide who you want as your constituency MHKs, and then the people of the Isle of Man deciding what sort of government that they want. I mean, the incoming candidates for Chief Minister can do a great deal in the next week, 10 days, to help us start to migrate towards that process. And one of the things would be to say, look, enough of this business about giving individual members petty pilfering delegations in departments so they get trained to be an apologist for a department. Goodness me, that drives me insane. It is out of date, inappropriate. You should be able to write on one, even not with bullet points, what this House wants to achieve and how it's going to achieve it. And that means putting the political process in charge. I think Sam made some really important points about how to engage the public. I wish I had the answers for that, but somehow it's got to happen.
Do you think
that would engage all those people who've said, oh, I can't be bothered?
Well, it's one of them where you're literally saying, look, if you want to have, this has been one of the few places where you can turn around and say, you can literally have a massive input into who actually leads this island and drives the political agenda. But just something, you'll know a lot more than we will about the horse training that's going on at the minute, about people who want to be Chief Minister and what they'll be asking of others. Do you think the change now, which came in with the reforms around pay, is going to make that harder? Because if you're not offering someone a ministerialship, why would they sit there and be the departmental member for organising fun fairs or whatever it is that people do?
Well, the short answer to that is that yes, and I was party as one of the emoluments committee to push for significant change, and we put it out to Miles Walker and one or two other, Ian, who used to be a guy in charge of industrial relations. They did a great job. They understood the challenge, and the response is very much, I think, one where people will understand that maybe they should have an executive role as perhaps a deputy minister, forget this departmental stuff, and on the other side be involved in scrutiny, because there's only 24 people, and they must understand the system right across the board. So learning how to scrutinise important matters is as important as being party to formation of policy. So I think it's a real step forward. It's only a small step, and we're trying to make these steps. But once we say, yeah, we know why we're going in this direction, let's just do it, and step forward and make those significant changes.
Sounds like you still want a job,
No, I don't know, Paul. I don't know. You listen to a very frustrated guy who tried for 10 years to engender change and failed. I've said that. I've failed, and it's disappointing. But it doesn't mean to say that others can't succeed where I failed.
The only thing is, one of the big things that you said was single legal entity has been a big thing that you've tried to push several times.
Well, unless you...
But before the election, Alf Cannon was talking about that in Tynwald, about that's something that should be looked at after the election, and we assume he's going to be in the running for the top job. Do you think that it could be something that could be achieved? So maybe, even if you're saying it hasn't been done in your 10 years, but something that you've been pushing and pushing and pushing, you may see it happen in the next 5 years.
I would go so far as to say that ultimately, if we don't achieve modernised government under the form of operating divisions, answerable to a body with a very significant political influence at the strategic and policy forming level, then we're heading for future failure, because the weaknesses in our current system are so significant that, as it were, colloquialism, we'll start to run out of road. We look at the challenges we've got. We've got the public sector pension fund running out. We've got huge. I mean, we could have a whole programme on the whole issue of climate change and the cost implications to that, and how to make it a pragmatic programme rather than what currently is really a puritanical, ideological approach, which it needs to move from, onto the fact that we all know we're getting climate change, but how are we actually going to make it happen without encumbering the individual family or individual with huge costs? So the challenges facing this new administration are very, very significant.
Well, let's have another section I thought might be done, but I think there's more to be done. So that's the end of part 2. We'll pick up on this in part 3.